How long can you hide the man you love before he forces the truth out? The question hit Carson Hale like a freight train the moment his assistant slid the engagement announcement across the polished mahogany desk. At 35, Carson stood at the pinnacle of Silicon Valley success. Hale Tech had revolutionized data security. His face graced the covers of Forbes and Wired, and investors lined up outside his San Francisco office like pilgrims. Yet none of them knew the real Carson, the one who came home every night to Jonah Reed, the man who had quietly owned his heart for a decade. It had started simply enough, back in a tiny Mission District coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday in 2014. Carson, then a rising executive still wearing the weight of his conservative Texas upbringing, had spilled his latte across Jonah's sketchbook. Instead of anger, Jonah had laughed, those warm hazel eyes crinkling at the corners, and offered to buy him a replacement. 10 years later, that laughter still anchored Carson through boardroom battles and sleepless nights. Jonah, 33 now, worked as a freelance photographer whose quiet gallery shows in Oakland never made headlines, but always made Carson's chest tighten with pride. They had built a life in the shadows, shared apartment in No Valley, weekend hikes in Marin, whispered promises under the covers, all while Carson smiled for cameras beside women his publicist carefully selected. The engagement to Emily Hargrove was never supposed to feel real. Her father, a major investor, had made the merger conditional on family values, optics. Carson's own parents back in Dallas still sent not-so-subtle texts about grandchildren and church. So he had said yes 3 weeks ago, convincing himself it was just paperwork, a temporary shield. Emily understood the arrangement. She had her own secrets. But standing there in the boardroom with the press release already drafted, Carson felt the lie cracking open. His phone buzzed. "Jonah, dinner at home tonight? I got that Thai place you love." Carson stared at the message until the screen dimmed. How did you tell the man who had never asked for the spotlight that you were about to step into one with someone else? He typed back a quick, "Sounds perfect," and slipped the phone into his pocket like a confession he wasn't ready to make. That evening, the fog rolled in thick over the city as Carson climbed the stairs to their apartment. Jonah had the table set, candles flickering, and a new print of the Golden Gate hanging above the couch, his latest gift. They ate in comfortable silence at first, the kind built from years of knowing every pause and glance. Then Jonah set down his fork. "You've been quiet since the board meeting. Everything okay at work?" Carson's throat tightened. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times in the car, yet the words still felt like betrayal. "They want me to announce the engagement next month. Big gala at the Fairmont. Emily's family is flying in." Jonah's fork froze midair. The candlelight caught the sudden stillness in his face, the way his shoulders squared as if bracing for impact. "Engagement," he repeated, voice flat. "To Emily. It's business, Jonah. You know that. It doesn't change us." But even as he said it, Carson heard the hollowness. Jonah stood slowly, carrying plates to the sink with deliberate calm that scared Carson more than shouting ever could. 10 years, Carson. 10 years of me waiting in the wings while you shook hands and smiled for cameras. I never asked you to come out. I never pushed. But this isn't just a ring. This is you choosing the version of yourself the world wants over the one who actually exists." Carson reached for him, but Jonah stepped back. "I'm not angry. I'm tired. And maybe I'm done being invisible." The words hung between them like the fog outside. Carson wanted to argue, to promise it would all blow over, but the fear in his own chest told him something had already shifted. That night, they slept on opposite sides of the bed for the first time in years, the space between them wider than the city lights stretching toward the bay. The next morning, Carson woke to an empty apartment. Jonah's camera bag was gone, along with the duffel he used for overnight shoots. A single post-it clung to the coffee maker. "Need space. Don't call the gallery." Carson crumpled it, then smoothed it out again, tracing Jonah's neat handwriting like a lifeline. He called in sick for the first time in his career and drove aimlessly through the Marin headlands, the Pacific crashing below as if echoing the storm inside him. By afternoon, he found himself at the small gallery in Oakland where Jonah's latest series hung, black and white portraits of couples who had been together for decades. The irony stung. Carson stood in front of one photo for 20 minutes. Two men in their 70s holding hands on a park bench, faces lined but eyes soft. The plaque read, "Still here." Jonah had captured the quiet defiance Carson had never managed. His phone rang. His mother. "Sweetheart, we saw the press release online. Emily seems lovely. When do we get to meet her?" Carson closed his eyes against the sunlight streaming through the gallery windows. "Soon, Mom. It's complicated." She laughed the way Southern mothers do when they sense deflection. "Complicated is just another word for scared, Carson. Your father and I only want what's best. The world is changing, but some things, well, they still matter for business." He hung up feeling smaller than the boy who had left Texas at 18. Back at the office, Emily waited in his private conference room, elegant in a cream-sheath dress. "I heard about the leak," she said gently. "The PR team is spinning it as a power couple moment. But Carson, if this is too much, we can find another way." She knew about Jonah. They had discussed boundaries early on. Yet her kindness only amplified his guilt. That evening, Jonah finally answered his text. They met at their favorite bench in Dolores Park, the city spread out like a glittering promise neither of them fully trusted anymore. Jonah looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. "I spent the day shooting at the pier. Watched families, tourists, people holding hands without thinking twice. And I realized I've been holding my breath for 10 years. Carson reached for his hand, but Jonah pulled away. "I'm not asking you to blow up your company. I'm asking you to stop making me feel like the dirty secret that keeps it running." The argument that followed was quiet but devastating. Jonah listed every missed holiday, every solo birthday, every time Carson had introduced him as a friend from college. Carson countered with boardroom threats, investor pullouts, the very real fear that coming out could cost hundreds of jobs. By the time they parted, no resolution in sight. Carson drove home alone, wondering if love could survive when one person's truth threatened the other's entire world. The following week blurred into strategy sessions and carefully worded statements. Carson's team prepped him for the gala like a general preparing for battle. Suits, talking points, even a fake timeline for the wedding. Meanwhile, Jonah threw himself into work, his Instagram filling with raw, unflinching street photography that somehow captured every emotion Carson couldn't voice. Late one night, Carson scrolled through the feed in bed and saw a new post, a single shadowed figure standing at the edge of the Golden Gate. Back to the camera, captioned simply "Still waiting." The likes poured in, but Carson knew the image was meant for him alone. A crisis at work forced his hand. A major client threatened to pull funding over family values rumors. Carson found himself on a plane to Dallas, sitting across from his father in the same oak-paneled study where he had once hidden his first boyfriend's letters. "Son, this engagement is the best decision you've made. Stability matters. People respect a man who builds something lasting." The words landed like stones. That night, Carson walked the streets of his childhood neighborhood and called Jonah. "I miss you. Come to the gala. Please. As my date. No more hiding." The silence on the line stretched. "You don't get to decide when I stop hiding, Carson. That's my choice now." Jonah hung up gently, but the click echoed louder than any shout. Back in San Francisco, the gala loomed. Emily arrived early, stunning in emerald silk, squeezing Carson's hand with genuine sympathy. "Whatever happens tonight, I've got your back. But he deserves better than half a life." The ballroom glittered with tech royalty and old money. Carson smiled through toasts, accepted congratulations, and felt every second like drowning in champagne. Then the doors opened, and Jonah walked in. He wasn't on the guest list. Security had let him through because the invitation list had never excluded close friends, and Jonah's name still carried that quiet weight in Carson's world. Dressed in a simple black tux he must have rented that afternoon, Jonah moved through the crowd like a photograph coming to life. Heads turned. Whispers rippled. Carson's heart slammed against his ribs as their eyes met across the room. Jonah didn't hesitate. He walked straight to the small stage where the band had just finished, borrowed the microphone with a polite nod, and spoke into the sudden hush. "Most of you know Carson Hale as the visionary behind Hale Tech. What you don't know is that for 10 years he's been the love of my life. Not in secret because he's ashamed of me, but because the world made him believe he had to choose. Tonight I'm choosing for both of us. I love him, and I'm done watching him choose fear." Flashbulbs exploded. Emily stepped forward first, calm and graceful, placing a hand on Carson's arm as if to steady him. Reporters surged. Carson stood frozen, the engagement ring box suddenly burning in his pocket like evidence. He saw his parents' faces on the video screen. They had joined remotely, mouths open in shock. Investors exchanged glances. In that single moment, every carefully constructed wall crumbled. Security tried to escort Jonah out, but Carson moved before he could think. He crossed the floor in long strides, took Jonah's hand right there under the chandeliers, and pulled him close. "You're right," he said into the microphone, voice cracking but clear. "I've hidden the best part of myself for too long. Jonah isn't my secret. He's my home. And if that costs me everything else, then I guess I never really had anything worth keeping." The room erupted. Some clapped. Others stared in stunned silence. Emily smiled softly from the sidelines, already texting her father that the merger terms would need renegotiation. Carson didn't care. For the first time in 10 years, he kissed Jonah in public, slow, certain, and unafraid. The fallout arrived like a tsunami. Headlines screamed, "Tech CEO comes out at own engagement party." Stock dipped 7% by morning. 2 board members resigned. Carson's parents called at dawn, voices tight with disappointment and confusion. "We love you," his mother said through tears, "but we don't understand why you couldn't tell us sooner." His father was quieter. "We'll figure it out, son. Family first. Always." Jonah stayed at the apartment that night. The two of them curled on the couch watching the news cycle spin. "I'm sorry I blindsided you," Jonah whispered. "I just couldn't watch you disappear anymore." Carson traced the line of Jonah's jaw. "You saved me from becoming someone I didn't recognize." They talked until sunrise, about therapy, about coming out to extended family, about the very real possibility that Hale Tech might need new leadership. Jonah offered to step back if the pressure became too much. Carson refused. "We do this together or not at all." The next weeks tested them in ways 10 years of secrecy never had. Protests outside the office from conservative groups. Supportive emails from employees who had been hiding too. Jonah's gallery sold out overnight. Strangers stopped him on the street for selfies. Carson faced emergency board meetings where investors demanded reassurance. Through it all, they held each other. Late-night walks along the Embarcadero, quiet dinners where they finally planned a real future instead of stolen moments. One afternoon, Carson drove Jonah to a quiet overlook in the hills above the city. He pulled out the engagement ring, not Emily's, but a simple platinum band he had bought months ago in a moment of private hope. "This was always meant for you. Marry me? For real this time. No contracts, no optics. Just us." Jonah's eyes filled. "Yes, but only if we tell the whole world first. No more half-lives." 6 months later, the wedding was small, held at a cliffside venue in Big Sur with the Pacific roaring below. Only close friends, immediate family who had slowly come around, and a handful of supportive colleagues attended. Carson's mother hugged Jonah tightly at the rehearsal dinner. "You brought my son back to us," she whispered. Jonah's parents, who had known from the beginning, teased Carson about finally making an honest man of their son. The ceremony itself was simple. No grand speeches, just vows written in the margins of Jonah's old sketchbook. Carson promised to choose love over fear every single day. Jonah promised to keep pushing when the world tried to pull them back into shadows. When they kissed, the sunset painted the sky in the same warm gold that had framed their first coffee shop meeting. Hale Tech survived, leaner, stronger, with new diversity initiatives that Carson championed personally. Jonah's photography series, Visible, became a national exhibit, touring museums and sparking conversations in boardrooms Carson once feared. They bought a house in the hills with room for a darkroom and a home office overlooking the bay. Some nights they still argued about visibility versus privacy, but the fights ended in laughter now, not silence. Looking back, Carson realized the engagement announcement had never been the real crisis. It was the moment everything cracked open so light could finally get in. The man he loved had refused to stay hidden, and in doing so had given them both the life they had been too afraid to claim. In the end, this story reminds us that hiding who we are doesn't protect the people we love. It only starves the relationship of oxygen. Carson and Jonah's journey proves that real courage isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about choosing honesty when every instinct screams to stay safe. The world may push back, investors may flinch, families may struggle to understand, but living half a life costs far more than any stock price or headline. If there's one lesson here, it's this: the man who forces the truth out isn't the villain. He's the hero who finally sets you free. Love isn't meant to hide in the dark. It's meant to stand in the light, hand in hand, no matter who's watching.